Okay. Okay. So yeah, so this is the rough outline of what I'm going to present. So title obviously is Tmuxification, and so we'll talk about what Tmux is and why you should use it, how to install Tmux. I'll go over some of the stuff about how you can configure Tmux. Then we'll talk about Tmux sessions. We'll talk about windows and panes, how you can use them, and maybe go over some advanced usage patterns. I'll maybe show if we have time. Uh, and then we'll see if we have any questions. Okay. So yeah, what is TMux? Yeah, so TMux essentially stands of like short for like a terminal multiplexer. The idea is that it's basically allows you to open multiple terminal sessions. Uh, you know, and you can sort of multiplex them, and you can have different layouts and whatnot. Like, that's the core of what TMux is. So Screen is an alternative, which was, I guess, sort of like a precursor to Tmux. I think it's still being used. It's still there, but I think it's less maintained. And Tmux is maintained more now, and also Tmux is much more configurable and easier to sort of work with. So it's become sort of more popular since a while. And so, if you guys don't didn't know, Tmux actually has like a sort of it operates on a sort of a client server model, which means uh, as soon as whatever you install Tmux, it actually has a server session running behind the scenes. Uh, and when you use Tmux, you essentially have the client which you kind of connect with it and give it commands, and then based on what command you give, it will do a certain operation. Typically, being either working with sessions, windows, and whatnot. And the reason this is kind of useful and really nice is because obviously you can connect and disconnect whenever you want, and even though you might disconnect, you can actually get back to it. So for instance, I'm right now in a TMUX session and I can detach, and then but then I can like I can go back and connect to the exact session, and I can exactly resume from where I was. This is useful for a lot of different reasons, especially useful on server sides, because you can set up and run a script, and you can disconnect, go home, and then you can connect back to the session, get it, and resume and all that. It's another reason thing. This also can be used for remote pair programming. This is something that is quite useful because of the way Tmux works. Again, um, multiple people can on a server side, like as long as people have access to the server, multiple people can connect to the server and join that session. And if you join the session, you have a shared view of exactly what is there in the session, and both people have the ability to interact with it, like create windows or whatever, navigate or even type commands, and but then both of them will be able to see it. So that's useful for pair programming as well. You can always have like a separate, I don't know, whatever call running, so that you can hear each other, but then from what you are actually doing, it's useful for a lot of different use cases, especially when you are remote, if you're not in the same room. uh, so yeah, so about why you should be using it, again, yes, one of the main things is it's extremely portable. It's available on every different platform that you would know. It's available on Raspberry, on all the platforms that you know of. It's easily available. It's really portable. And it's also highly configurable, but then the configuration itself, I think I'll get to that a little bit. It's the way it's designed is, again, makes it more portable, because it's just one file that if you want to replicate exactly the setup that you're comfortable with, that you like, you can actually you just have to copy that one file on, let's say, a server, and then you're ready to sort of will have exactly how the setup that you want. And so it makes it easy. Okay. Right. So the other obviously very useful thing, which I guess most people who ever use Tmux would know this, is basically the fact that you can create windows, panes, and whatnot in Tmux is basically like an interface. So you create multiple terminal sessions, right? But then when we speak in the context of a server, uh, if you were not, for instance, using Tmux, when you SSH, you'll have to first obviously SSH to a server, and then let's say you're executing certain commands. Crap. Okay. Am I back? I guess so. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, I think I had disconnected, but anyways. So yeah, so when you're connected to a server, if you're not using something like Tmux, so if you, let's say you start a command which is like, let's say a long running command, and and then but then at the same time you want to do something else on the server, then you have to like open another window and then SSH to the server all over again. Now SSHing to a server is slightly more expensive, it's time consuming, and there's this whole handshake that happens. Whereas when you use something like Tmux, it's actually very inexpensive to just keep creating windows, and you can like kind of work across in windows, and just it's much more faster to that way. And the fact that it's always persistent is also another add-on to it. Now installing Tmux, like I said, it's most package managers for most systems just have it as have it included. For OS X, for instance, you can just brew install Tmux. For Ubuntu, you can just apt install Tmux, and it's available on almost all platforms that you could imagine. So that's easy. The configuration. So the Tmux configuration, like I said, is resides typically in your home directory in a .tmux.conf file. And that's what makes it really portable. Like I can actually just copy over this file wherever I want, like on a Raspberry Pi or on my server or whatever, and then I will exactly have the same setup as how I have here. It makes it really portable. I can maybe okay. Um, so this is what my configuration obviously looks like. It is slightly big. I'm not going to go into details of a lot of stuff that is inside there yet, but then the idea is it's sort of like you can actually configure the the key bindings. You can configure various options that sort of enable or disable or certain features and make it behave certain way, and you can actually customize how it behaves in a lot of way. uh, uh, I think some of the more useful things, for instance, are the fact that you can actually customize the look and feel as well. Like for instance, even right now, when you're looking at my Tmux session, you'll obviously see that the look and feel, the colors, and a lot of the things are very different as what you would otherwise have seen maybe on a default session, because I have customized them and I've made them how I like them. I also It's kind of in sync with my whims. What do you call it? The color scheme, the theme as well. So it kind of works well for me. Um, yeah. Uh, yeah. Okay. I think that's mostly. Uh, So the configuration that covers it. I think, yeah. So the one of the main things about Tmux is the fact that you can have multiple sessions, and so obviously what you do generally typically is either you create a session, which you can do so by just simply saying Tmux new -s, and you provide a session name. In this particular case, if you're looking at it actually shows here on the left side that the session I'm in is Vim, and this is just the user who's logged in, which is Ruhasaga, which is me. And so, but the idea is you can create multiple sessions and you can do different things in them. Um, and so obviously there are multiple things you can do for that. You can use, for instance, Tmux ls to sort of list all the sessions there are. You can attach to a specific session. Again, this is useful, especially on a server. So like you can go start a session, and then when you, let's say, get back to the server access again, then you can just attach and go back to the session that you had created wherever you're doing your work, and this is also how any other user would attach and join your session. So the first user attached is obviously the first client, but then multiple people can join in and attach to the same session the same way, and then you would be sharing that the session. The other nice thing to have, which I use a lot, is choose session, which is slightly different than ls, which is list session, because in choose session I can actually just switch between sessions. It basically gives you on the top, you see there's a list of all the sessions currently I have open on my system, and on the bottom it gives you this nice sort of a preview of what the session has and stuff like that. I mean, I don't think the preview itself is useful that much, but then yeah, it's something to know. And but then the idea is I can actually switch between sessions. So what I do this for is typically is I would like have different sessions for different context. Like for instance, if I'm working on some open source stuff, I generally do it in a different session. If I'm working on some, um, let's say a different client project or something, I would do it in a different session. The reason why that works, at least in my opinion, is because then you don't have to clutter your session with a lot of windows, right? Otherwise, I mean, I think I've seen a lot of people do this even with their browsers. Like I see people have like a lot of tabs and stuff like that, but I generally don't do that. What I do is I'll create multiple windows and keep few tabs in them instead. So at least this is something that I do a lot. So yeah, this is session. Then coming to Windows and Paint. So this is kind of the one of the more uh, main pieces of Tmux that kind of help you working with. Uh, so Windows are essentially the top level. They're similar to tabs, like in any other application. And for instance, in this view right now, you will see you can see these numbered windows on the bottom. One is WeChat, two is the dot file, three is something else, or all that. So these are all the windows. And so since we have windows, we have the summary or the list of them in the status line down bottom, right? Again, this can be customized. I think this can even go on the top if you want, and all that. But this is all customizable. And but then you also have a lot of these key bindings which you can use for navigation between them. For instance, okay, even before that, for those who don't know, in Tmux, you have this concept of a prefix, and the idea of a prefix is basically that's a special key binding which Tmux understands, which is used for as a precursor to any other mapping that you want to use, and that's typically useful because you don't want to sort of what do you call have a mapping that collides with any other system level mapping, for instance, right? So typically, any tmux specific stuff, when you want to bind, it is generally it has a prefix which by default is control B, which is awkward. A lot of people remap it to control A, and what I do, I have it mapped to is control space. That's something I think works well for me at least. So you can have your prefix, and then after the prefix, you can either press a number to directly go to that window. For instance, I can say prefix 4 and it goes directly to this window number 4, right? Or I can say prefix with n or a p, which takes you to the next or the previous window. And then you also have a prefix L, which is the default, which takes you to the last window. And this is somewhat useful sometimes when you want to just switch between two windows, which are not necessarily just next to each other. And then, like, if you want to do some work in them, sometimes is useful. So now windows are sort of like the top level thing, but then you also have panes that you can have. Panes essentially, so if within a single window, like for instance here we have these three panes, right? So the idea is you can keep creating splits, or all these are individual panes. Okay. Uh, right, and so even with panes, you have a series of again mappings that which you can use for navigation between the panes. One of the typical one you can use is prefix with an O, which just basically cycles between all the panes there are one by one, or you can use an prefix with an arrow key, which takes you to in the direction of the arrow. So if you press, for instance, prefix with down, it just goes down, and depending on where your cursor is, it might go to a different place. But then similarly, you can press the prefix left or right. One nice thing about a lot of mappings in Tmux is a lot of these mappings are repeatable mappings, which means I can once I press prefix, there's like a short period of time within which I can repeat the secondary mapping, and it will do that action that many times. For instance, I can press my prefix and I can press n two times to go to the second whatever the third window, or I can similarly press prefix and then arrow two times, and then it will actually continue going until you keep pressing for that short duration of time. That's sometimes useful. um, Right. Another nice thing which I use a lot for with paints is you can actually kind of zoom into those paints and then zoom out of them. This is very useful, and the idea is very simple. Basically, I'm currently in this pane, right? And I can so the mapping for this by default is your prefix plus Z, right? Which is, and so once you zoom, you sort of you can that particular pane maximizes and occupies the entire set, and when you zoom out, you kind of get back to the original layout. So this is also useful. Okay, so for some advanced usage patterns, okay, since we have some time, I guess I can go over some of them. So one, for instance, what you can do is there is you can send text between panes, and what I typically use this for is, for instance, let's say so I'm in the PC top this thing, right? So let me open SQL, okay, and let me open. Do I have this? I have it. Okay, so for instance, what I can do is I can send text from pane which is in the top, which is my Vim instance, to the pane which is on the bottom. And obviously, how it's done is slightly complex. I won't go into how it's done, but then the fact that it can be done, I can showcase that. So I can actually literally just send text from the top to bottom. And if you see here, what happened is, oops, what happened is it executed that query here, and it just happens to be that there's no data or whatever, right? For instance, this would be more useful, I guess. So I can send the describe sale point subscriptions thing, and then it sends that to there, and then I can just see it. So this I find it very useful because I can actually spend my time, write a query. Sometimes the query may be really big, right? I can like, okay, well, this query looks like really big, right? I can write a query, and then I can just keep sending it and execute it, and then I can see it. Like it's a kind of like a much faster workflow for me. So this is very useful where I'm basically sending text from one pane to the other, and I've obviously kind of automated it using with some mappings and stuff. But then that's essentially happening is literally taking text and feeding it to the other pane. That's it. Right. Okay. Then zooming pane, I think I've already covered. The other thing which is slightly less useful, I guess, is that you can join and send panes, which means that if I wanted, let's say I say, oh sorry, so I can join pane, let's say four, like yeah. So what it did essentially was it took the window number four, uh, and it joined it within this session itself. So a window that was already existing somewhere, it brought that and joined it here. Similarly, I can send it, like for instance, this window. If I don't want, I can just send it, and I can say whatever four, or actually just send it to that window. Just it's sometimes useful. It's I would say not very useful. The other somewhat useful feature I think is you have a concept of sticky window. So for instance, I have this for demo purposes. I think this I'm I'm running VChat, which is an IRC client. Uh, for those who don't know what IRC is, it's basically the old Slack. Okay, okay, yeah, and so the thing is, the idea of sticky windows is so I have this window which is here, but I can sort of have the same window sort of represent in multiple sessions. So that window is sticky. So it's just one window, but it's sort of sticky between different sessions. That's the idea that you can have. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really easy to understand. I think. Okay. That's mostly it. Okay. This looks weird. Okay. Okay. So that mostly covers, I think, what I wanted to show. So if you have questions, let's go with them.
Which plugin are you using to present in Vim?
This is my own plugin, uh, uh, which is called Vim Marp. Basically, there was a tool called Marp. An idea is actually nice and straightforward. And oh no, this is not it. But anyways, oh wait, where did my what's happened? Oh. some lag. Okay, the idea is actually I can stop my this thing. So there's just one markdown file, and you just have these horizontal separators, right? And each individual thing is sort of like a single slide, and what my plugin does is sort of splits them by that and shows them individually. It's just and in a nice sort of whatever presentable mode. Sorry. So
How will you align text and all? Center align text, can you do all that?
again, like it's like a combination of multiple plugins. So for that, here there is a plugin I'm using called Goyo, which basically is like a distraction-free editing thing. So the idea would it just goes into this distraction-free mode, which just removes all the clutter and all. So it centers and everything. That's what comes from Goyo. But so I've been using this a lot for my Vim, Vim presentations, because because I'm presenting from Vim, it kind of works out well. Here, I guess it's not showcased a lot but then the idea is because it's markdown, you can actually show code and snippets and everything, and it actually renders fairly nicely, even though it's in the terminal. But yeah.
Nice.
Okay. Anything? What else?
What was that command that you used to send text between panes?
Okay, so I mean, if for Tmux you want, Tmux has a command called send keys. Man Tmux. Right, so send keys is where the actual magic is, which basically literally means you can actually send a series of keys literally to a given pane. And but for Vim specifically, I use a plugin by Tpop called T-Bone. T-Bone. Yeah, and this gives me a few commands like T-write or some command like that. So then I have mapped them to send to a given pane. And so you just say, for instance, what you do is, okay, you have a selection, say T-write, say,
Awesome. Thanks.
hello, yeah. Okay, the battery of my headset went down, so now anything else?
Oh, it's pretty good actually.
So I guess that's it then. All right, thanks guys.
Thanks, Dhruva.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.